Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We are all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you.
To you, and thank you for finding time to be with us. It is Monday, the 16th of January 2023. I trust that you had a wonderful weekend and you're ready for this new week. The show is Matsanga Global Trends, and we shall look at what is making headlines in the global sphere today, paying attention to the ongoing war or invasion in Ukraine that is almost 1 year now. I think come next month, just a few weeks away. So we shall be looking at that. And thank you so much for joining us. So before I bring in my panelists and we have that conversation, allow me to just bring us up to date with the latest headlines this morning. We start with those papers from Kenya. The Star newspaper, Rachel Hasler Gospel targets 1.2 million women, plans to go big on table banking and environmental conservation. That story is on page 4 and 5. Relief as Red Cross distributes food in Isiolo County. And then there's a pictorial there of ODM leader Raila Odinga and South Africa Tourism Minister Lindiwe Sisulu after a meeting in Johannesburg yesterday. Gardener sought after consultant Mwiti killed. That also is on page 3. And IEBC chiefs to launch poll report as they exit. The remaining IEBC commissioners will today preside over the launch of the 2022 post-election evaluation report, their last public function before exiting office tomorrow. Chairman Wafula Chebukati, Commissioners Professor Abdi Gulia and Boya Mule will leave their office on January 17th, having served the constitutional 6-year term. The trio goes in history as the first set of election chiefs to complete a constitutional term in office. That story is on page 8. The Standard newspaper, Junior Secondary, The Great Divide. Head teachers are pushing to prepare facilities for the start of new term, but a visit to school shows public primary schools have no laboratories for new curriculum, and others reporting inadequate number of teachers, while private schools are all set. That story is on page 12 and 13. We shall kick out cartels in food chains soon. That is what President Ruto said. And you'll find that stories on page 6. Kenyans abroad send home 500 billion Kenya shillings. All right, that is on page 25. And Gachagwa's guards put Kingpin quest in jeopardy. You'll find that on page 10. The Daily Nation, the murder plot, bizarre tale when Lucy Njeri Muhami landed at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi last November. She did not know that 2 men, ostensibly assigned by her husband to meet and drive her home, were in fact members of a killer squad that had been paid 1.5 million Kenya shillings to eliminate her, until one of them jumped into the back seat and started strangling her. The story is on page 2 and 3. Okay, that's scary. Savers from land cartels, victims plead with Ruto. Okay, that is on page 12. Form 1 placement results to be known today. That is on the back page. And from school fees to taxes, you'll have to dig deeper into your pocket. That is on page 7. You'll find that story. Very well. Let's look at other newspapers from across the region. The Daily Monitor from Uganda. New details emerge on Love Triangle fire. You'll find that inside there. UPDF to recruit over 23,000 soldiers. That is in the New Vision. Also still from Uganda. The Daily News from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe Electoral Commission speaks on its polls report, says it will fix all identified draft delimitation flaws. And then CCC laments its members' arrests. And then Newsday, elections already rigged. That is according to SCOS. Newsday also from Zimbabwe. The Punch, that is from Nigeria. Bank borrowing from CBN, that is the Central Bank of Nigeria, rises 260% to 21.87 trillion naira. Lenders frequent central bank lending window post COVID-19 as business activities pick up. And then widows demand benefit as federal government honors fallen soldiers. That is what we have. And then terrorist lynch in Niger. Priest abduct 5 Katsina worshippers. There's a mayhem of terrorist attacks, I think, and the insecurity situation in Nigeria and also Burkina Faso over the weekend. I think I shall bring you those news later, much later on. Now, The Nation from Nigeria. Tinubu rallies APC leaders, candidates for elections. And then the New Times from Rwanda, why fish production targets have become unachievable. Kagame tasks leaders to carry burden of responsibility. You'll find that also on the front page of the New Times from Rwanda. The Citizen from Tanzania, why analysts hail BOT's approach on digital currency. Analysts say a decision by the central bank to opt for a cautious and risk-based approach towards the adoption of the digital currency is good and will safeguard Tanzania's recent economic gains. That story is on page 2. Agriculture a priority in new SMEs policy and researchers to stop new banana disease. That is what we have in some of the newspapers from across the continent of Africa. So I'm joined this morning by Wanda Wesonga from Nairobi. Wanda, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Miriam.
All right, so you've been listening. I don't know if there's any news that you've picked there that you'd like to talk about or highlight.
I'll only highlight on one, that is the junior secondary schools enrollment in Kenya.
Go ahead.
Where there is perception that the private schools are ready and the local government schools are not ready. To your surprise, or you'll be shocked that those parents who will run to the private schools, just private schools, are the ones that are more likely going to lose their kids or hurt. Number one, I look at the presidential report, or the team that was to give us the report, of which they gave us a report, I think, on 1st December. And then I was shocked that, or I don't know, do I paint or put this, that the final report was to be given now or come March. So I'm wondering, why wait until when kids are already in schools, then you give the report? Therefore, when I look into the CBC, the junior secondary schools enrollment, I feel like the guidelines that probably could have come with the final report that you have never seen are going to hurt parents. Like, one, these kids are going to be domiciled in primary schools. How many teachers that qualifies to teach in secondary schools are going to be employed to manage these kids? Or are we going to have a case of a prolonged primary school, then we call them secondary schools? Secondary school students. That if you're not keen, you're going to have a prolonged primary school, then it will affect the senior secondary school. Very few schools have laboratories. And when they talk of private schools being ready, then they're giving credit to those that don't deserve the very credit. Therefore, I wish that the Ministry of Education be very keen and careful to ensure that everything is well taken care of. Failure to we are going to lose a generation.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and I think those are just, I think the challenges, because this is a new curriculum and it is the first time that we are transiting to it. The class that sat for their class as grade 6, and now they're going to grade 7, which is supposed to be junior high. And so I think the teething problems were expected, but the level of preparedness perhaps is what is worrying. I don't know if also the transition, because now we have another government. Remember, the other officials under Professor Magoha perhaps had knew how to go about it, because they'd been working on it for a very long time. So now we have this new team. Could that also be a challenge as far as our transition is concerned as far as who is heading the education docket right now? Perhaps maybe you could have left the other team to, I don't know, which way could this be also part of the things that is affecting this transition?
In person, I look at it as a deliberate failure, because any person that has been in the school setting knows that there is a total difference between different levels of learning, totally different. Like the primary school are just different from secondary schools, and secondary are very different from the university and the college bit of it. Number two, every person knows that a serious secondary school must be having a laboratory. And therefore, it doesn't even need any rocket science to tell that, one, you need to be very clear as you draw that line, even if they are domiciled together, that you come up with the guidelines that will draw a clear line to differentiate between primary and secondary. Now, I'm trying to imagine this. I've taught for some years. Now, I'm trying to imagine this. There is a primary school teacher seated in the same staff room with a secondary school teacher in the same department, preparing for their lessons or discussing the dynamics of those two levels. In this case, this level that will have so many teachers will definitely affect negatively that department or that level with very few teachers. And in this case, the junior secondary school is going to have few teachers in the setting, within the same compound. So when they are seated together, I'm trying to imagine the kind of discussion they'll be having as they prepare for the lessons, as they tackle the dynamics that comes with education. We are losing a generation when people are looking at it. And it's not even that probably the former could have done better if left there. Any other person that has been in the school setting knows when they are failing and when they are not failing. Because you can easily tell it.
Okay, so now the major issues, according to that report that you quoted there earlier, and the investigations and what has been found to be the reality on the ground. Laboratories, public schools lack the facilities and will have to rely on secondary schools in the neighborhood. That is number one. And on infrastructure, I'm reading from the Standard newspaper. Members of Parliament are non-committal on whether NGCDF will be used to build labs and other facilities fast enough, as there are other projects that are incomplete. And then on school fees, the Ministry of Education has not released fees guidelines for junior secondary, throwing parents into a confusion. So parents don't even know what to do now. They don't know how to prepare.
And that's why I'm saying the guidelines. Why did they wait, or why should the final report come in March when kids are already been in school? Why wait until when it's too late? Then this report that confirmed that private schools are better placed. Have they walked into these schools and confirmed that we have laboratories in this school? Have they gone ahead to confirm that the preparation rooms are all set? Because what makes me more worried or an afraid person are the preparation rooms and the laboratories. If parents, I wish we had somebody out there who could just decide and build as an investment that you build laboratories and you have a lab technician. Then we have different person investing in proper homeschooling programs. Probably that could have helped, because we're going to have schools hike their fees in the name that this is a secondary, but those kids will be treated as primary school kids. We'll have kids that will do theoretical practicals. It is a practical, but instead of going in a physics laboratory, a biology laboratory, that kid will be taught a theoretical practical.
So from you being a teacher, Wanda, sorry, even as you conclude your thought process, would you say perhaps did we rush into implementing this new curriculum? Did you need in more time to prepare, or what could have been the immediate perhaps solution? Did we rush with all this?
We didn't rush. We are only failing at planning. We didn't rush, because building a laboratory and equipping a laboratory that can serve a certain quarter or a certain area. Okay, we have secondary schools with some that are already having laboratories. Therefore, it was a case of knowing how many laboratories are we adding here. Because the key issue here are the laboratories. And if I'm told that laboratories are not enough, especially in the primary schools that are now going to domicile these kids, then it was a case of making arrangements to know how can they use their neighboring secondary schools laboratories. And therefore, we didn't rush as such, but it is a deliberate failure in terms of planning from where I sit. That we know the challenges, but we are not addressing the challenges. If it was a case of rushing, then it means laboratories could be halfway being built or halfway built. Then we could have said we needed more time to complete the construction. But if I'm told construction is not going on, if I'm told nobody is addressing that aspect, then I don't see, a case of rushing, because from the word go, nobody is talking about them. If it was a project ongoing, then someone tells you, you gave me 3 months, and I feel like this project can only be delivered in 6 months, then you'll say, no, the project was rushed. But in this case, projects have not started. So we cannot talk of rushing, because we don't know how much time do they need to ensure that laboratories and preparation rooms are ready.
And one would argue that this is something that the government knew and the schools knew in time. I think for the last how many years, like 5 years or so, we knew we were transiting into a new curriculum. So there was enough time to make sure that some of these facilities and infrastructure, perhaps we were assuming the schools were getting ready for it, of course, working with the government and the Ministry of Education. And I think just anchoring to the point that you made there earlier, it is the lack of preparedness. And now the parents don't know, do we buy these children new uniform? Do we leave them with the same uniform? What is the uniform? What will happen? And are they staying in the same schools? I think the government decided they will stay in the same primary schools. Then perhaps they will, now they don't know whether will they have new uniforms. That has not even been decided yet for most of the schools. And nowadays getting school supplies is very, very expensive. So parents have not had enough time to prepare. So it's going to be a very difficult time, just over a week away. I think schools are opening on the 23rd. And so parents are just bracing themselves to another headache, and they don't know what that will look like. I think it is the uncertainty that is giving parents sleepless nights. And I'm just hoping that the Ministry of Education and the government perhaps will learn from this, so that it makes sure part of the stakeholders are able to prepare adequately. And that is the parents, and even these the children who are crossing over. They don't know. Everything is at a limbo. So anyway, we just hope that will work out. I think those are the the teething problems, especially when you were introducing something new. And I don't know how it were when we were transiting to 844. I don't know how that was for the class that transited and the challenges that they faced then. Perhaps they would have just looked at that and compared the notes and perhaps learn from that and see how can we adopt and how can we transit smoothly. But usually that is expected wherever there is some major change to happen. But the issue of preparedness, there is a key issue and might affect a lot of people. Okay, so now let's turn our attention to the main topic of today, and we're going to look at the war in Ukraine. It's almost a year old now. Come February, it will be 1 year old, and I think Europe and other countries, Western countries, have been supplying Ukraine with a lot of ammunition and all that. They can't directly fight Russia because of obvious reasons. Nobody wants to see a World War III. But it has been intensifying. It has been intensifying, and things do not seem to look any better. And so there has been a global crisis as far as the global economy is concerned. And we were just starting to recover from COVID-19 when this war started last year in February. And so we've seen countries suffer from inflation and rising food prices and lack of even food that has been, from that war, and other factors and high fuel prices that affected the cost of production and the cost of everything else. So it has been a very difficult time for many countries. But perhaps, I don't know, maybe you could just share from your perspective what has been the biggest impact since this war started, the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, because I think that is what this is.
I think one of the major impact of this war is the approach towards it. Like when you look at a country like Russia, it supplies, and especially to Europe, it supplies that is the fuel, the energy. The energy part of it. Of which you talk of energy, then you definitely are talking about production. Now, this country was when the war started, Russia was seriously sanctioned. Now, when it was seriously sanctioned, to me it was like you're punishing yourself without knowing. That the approach that the rest of the world, and especially America and probably European nations took, ended up affecting production, ended up affecting the economy in general. Number two, you look at, still under the approach, being very quick at picking sides or picking positions, that we are supporting this group, we are not supporting this group. To me, it as well ended up creating geopolitical, economic realignments that ended up now as well affecting the economy. That countries, you look at countries that Russia was supplying to and countries that Ukraine was supplying to. With Ukraine is such a powerful nation, and when it talks about feeding the rest of the world, it's such an important nation. Now, these two nations, part of the approach from the rest of the world, people picked positions, nation picked positions. So in this case, it means the relationship between Ukraine and China automatically was affected. The relationship between Russia and any country that was now supporting Ukraine definitely was affected. And in this case, it means Russians will not be very easy, will not be okay supplying their products to their enemy. In this case, it's like you're punishing me, but at the same time, I want to sort your issues. I want to help you sort your problems. Therefore, someone will automatically be reluctant on a human point of view. Therefore, the approach that the rest of the world took it ended up hurting more than the war itself. That if they approach it at a different angle, then face the war and try address the war, not punishing, not being very quick, being very fast at trying to sanction and punish, pick position, realign each other, then it could probably we couldn't be facing this. It could have come in gradually, bit by bit, but not just as an instant. When you look, look at this war, the impact have been very fast felt. It didn't take too much time, and to me, it was because of poor reading of the outcome or the impact of the decisions that the rest of the world were picking.
Mm-hmm. But from when you look at the motivation or the driving factor of Russia and of Vladimir Putin, looking at it from individual level, because this is, I think, something that he's always wanted to do. I think he still has a dream of a very strong USSR, and he's not forgiven a US and these other countries of having been instrumental in dividing that great country, because when USSR was whole, then we had to, central powers. We had a bipolar, world, if we might put it that way. Two superpowers, that was the US and the USSR. So after the breaking down of USSR, you can tell, and the reason why, the last leader of USSR, Gorbachev, he died, I think, last year, and Putin did not even attend his funeral. It was a public funeral. Putin did not even attend because it is under him that USSR was divided into these other many countries. So his ambition and his dream seems to be, we have to get this country back together. And so Ukraine, you belong to the larger community of Russia, whether you like it or not. I've been seeing how his ambition of expansionist ambition of getting parts of Ukraine and all this. That could be one of the things. So I don't know if there's anything anybody would have done, despite of the sanctions that you've mentioned, that would have enabled a different outcome, because Putin seems to have been set and he seems to have been on a particular journey, a road or ambition, and I don't know if there's anything anybody would have done that would have changed the trajectory of this war.
And you put it so well. To me, Putin is a version of Hitler, but a thinking Hitler. Hitler was a version of Putin, but a not thinking person. Now, he easily picked conflicts that you ought not to have. That is Hitler. Now, when you look at Putin, it's very true that he's looking at Russia not as Russia itself, but as USSR. When he looks at Ukraine, he feels like this is a province that we are losing, and we cannot lose our province. And when he looks at it, then feels like it's leaning on the sides of the West. It's leaning on some European nations. So he feels like this is a son that belongs to the family, but has only been corrupted by the neighbor. And therefore, to him, that is a bloodline. And you don't just lose your bloodline. But he forgets that times have changed. This nation has developed different cultures, different ways of reasoning and perceiving things. And it was, yes, a part of a family, but it's no more. Then let us move on. But Hitler is still clinging on the history. He's holding on the history and don't want to let go. What could have been done different from my point of view? And I'm sure, if I'm not sure, then a good number of persons, if not a good one or two people in Russia or that are Russians, don't support the invasion of Ukraine. And I'm equally probably convinced that even militaries, the members of the militaries in Russia, do not fully buy into this conflict. And in this case, then it means Hitler and some few people, or with persons that thinks like him, they're the ones who believes that this is a son that is being corrupted and we need him back. And therefore, what should have been approached, what the rest of the world should have approached differently is this rush to sanction the country. Because this is Hitler, and person who believes or who looks at it based on history. But still within the same group, we have those who don't look at it at the point of history. They have moved on. And therefore, if the rest of the world approached it, without struggling or rushing to put sanctions, but instead approach it on a point, on Hitler's point of view, on Putin's point of view, that Putin is looking at it based on history. Let us approach it and let's approach it at that angle. Let us try and either help to end the war, either support whoever you want to support. If they want to support Ukraine, well and good. Let us do anything possible or everything possible to ensure that we put to an end this conflict. But let us not rush to sanction this nation, because not all of them are buying into this conflict. So to me, the rush to sanction, it's the only area that the rest of the world failed.
Okay, thank you. But also, others would argue that Hitler just went back to reclaim parts of the lands that had been taken away after that a treaty that he felt was very unfair to Germany, and part of it is Rhineland, I think. But I think, he went ahead and he wanted to have Austria, if I'm not wrong, and I think Czechoslovakia or something like that. I don't know if he was very lucky with that, but I do understand how you're comparing these two leaders, and you can see how much I think the personality is driving how they are making decisions on behalf of the country. When you look at the analysis in international relations, the 3 levels, I think 4 levels, individualism, state, and international system, and community. And to some large extent, a leader's personality plays so much into how they make decisions. And I think these two leaders, it's you can clearly see who they are play out. Unfortunately, some of these things have greater impact. Like now we see how this war in Ukraine has played out, and the effect it has had in the global supply chain that I think has really sent shockwaves across the world. I don't know, is there a way, are there lessons that perhaps the world has learned? I know Europe has learned that its over-reliance on Russia as far as the gas is concerned is something that they need to find a solution for. And trust me, the European Union will find a solution for that. They will. They will. But is there anything else that perhaps the world can learn from this war, especially back here in the continent, and how we can be prepared if something happens in the global market and it's sending global shocks, and how we can cushion ourselves in the future should such a thing again happen? I know the war is continuing.
When I now address the African view and African lessons from this war, I feel like we have not learned so much. When you look into the kind of decisions, the kind of, the debate that we had the other day that needed voting on if Russia should be put on the reparations, with some of our nations voting yes, others no, others deciding to abscond. and you try and relate it to what happened in Libya, how we voted and all this, the patterns are the same. Meaning, we are still leaning on the history, or we are still not, we are yet to move on. Unless we have specific nations that have now looked at it and felt like there is need to improve their agricultural sector. Like the other day, I saw Ethiopians trying now to improve their wheat production, thinking that we now need to be able to serve the region because there is already market. So unless you have specific nations that have looked at it as an opportunity to grow from it, then as a continent, we are yet to learn. We are yet, like look at this. The other day we have been receiving fertilizer donations from Russia. Nobody is talking about coming up with a farm, a plant that will invest either in organic or either way just to ensure that the soil fertility is addressed. We are all seated and okay, meaning we are yet to move on. We are still leaning on the side of history, feeling like life is still okay, things will change and we'll be able to move on. To the rest of the world, I don't know so much about it. The only thing that I look at it and feel like either they have learned is economic realignments. That they are struggling to realign themselves economically so that they're able to sort out the economic in a repeat of such a thing. That Russia is struggling to mend their ties, to be very close to China, so that they'll be able to do business together, grow together economically. China is, the other day was in Africa trying to woo some one or two nations. Therefore, the rest of the world are trying to realign themselves economically so that they'll be able to grow, and probably they're looking at it as this conflict might be there for some times. So we need to know how do we move on as a nation and without being negatively affected. But Africa is okay. Things in Africa seems not to be changing because I'm not seeing the regional groups coming up with policies that will improve agricultural production within the region. Like we have not had the East African Community, the parliament in Arusha, talking about how do we then now grow as a region and ensure food security in the region. Instead, we are still politicking. We are still talking about the war in DRC, which has been there, instead of knowing there is now another issue on the table that need to be talked about.
And talking about the geopolitical economic realignment that you've alluded to there, I think for those who are cooperating and trading with Russia, they've continued to do so. And the African leadership, a couple of times maybe felt as if they're being coerced to take sides in this conflict. And we've seen how that has played out during the votings at the United Nations, and how the countries have voted, others deciding to abscond, others voting against, others voting for. And I think, is it the European Union? I think they were coming so hard on us here, and they're saying, Africa, you have to, and the US, I think they're forcing us to vote a certain way. I said, but African leaders, others are saying, no, I think for the interest of each country, we should be allowed to vote however you want to vote, and we should not be coerced into voting a certain way. So I think this is, what happens when in this global politics or global political arena, and we know the United Nations is it's a global political arena, because it's politics that drives and peace and security that drives, you know, the United Nations and their interest that are represented, you know, there. And so it is times like that they find Africa to be very important, because they need them to come vote, especially in the General Assembly. They need their votes, and so they're able to influence us in one way and the other. And when they're not able to fully influence us, then that becomes a problem. So even as we look at the participation of the continent in the global arena, and judging from now this Ukraine war and from you know, COVID, we just coming out of COVID, I see there's been an increase in, so we're not fully out of the woodworks yet. There's still a problem. The global pandemic is still there. And the way we were treated, especially as a continent and as a people during the outset of COVID-19, and how every country prioritized their own people, and we saw a very nationalistic agenda play out in the global arena, where European Union, they're just looking out for themselves and within their countries, and nobody was thinking about these poor Africans down at the south and how can we help them. You know, they were just able to come out to rescue us after they were done and they felt their people have been taken care of. And then you know, the Ukraine war happened, and now they need us to go there and vote in ways that would side with them. So it's very interesting when this, you know, this politics and events in the global arena. So Africa and its people, how can we now move ahead and perhaps cushion ourselves and maybe be self-reliant, like you said? Why can one country, perhaps in the continent, you know, get an investor to come and build a fertilizer farm, say here in the region, where they get to supply, you know, fertilizers across the continent, because apparently we need that, a lot of that, to farm. And what other ways can we adopt to ensure that, because I know the food chain was really, really affected, we address the issue of food security without necessarily relying on factors, external factors from outside the continent?
One, I feel like when you look at the Forbes records, we have quite rich people in Africa. Mm-hmm. Persons like Aliko Dangote, and we have a neighbor here who finds himself with that record, Mo Dewji, with that is in Tanzania, with so many other persons. And some of them have gone ahead to invest even outside the continent. To me, I feel like if these people can be asked on why this is happening, chances are they'll tell us our bureaucracies affect their businesses and their decisions not to invest. For such an investor, then they need a serious market, a big market. When a person has reached a position that they can now serve the entire continent, then it means you really need to convince this person to serve 1 or 2, 3 nations, because they have grown. They have superseded the levels of serving 100 people, 200, 1,000 people. But once a person gets a position of serving 1 million persons, then if you bring down this person to serve people in the sense of hundreds of thousands, who is serving in millions of persons, then you really need good reasons to convince this person. And when this person probably dares or tries to dare, then comes to, the sense of being awakened in the sense that these people are not ready. The bureaucracies are still there. Their population is about 50 million, 45 million, but they're still looking at themselves as a small group or as persons grow alone, be alone, not being ready to work with their neighbors and such kind of, then these persons feel like, no, I cannot invest here. When we were swearing in our president, Aliko Dangote was in attendance. When Magufuli was being sworn in Tanzania, Aliko Dangote was in attendance, meaning that him as a person will want to invest in his own home, the continent. But chances are bureaucracies affect this. Like, I'm trying to imagine this. If the borderless worked in terms of business, then we have this person, or we have an investor putting a farm either in the East African region that will be able to serve the whole region. Will this person not be ready to do this? In the sense that the bureaucracies are not there now. That this person knows his trucks or her trucks will easily move across the borders and serve the region. Not that when this farm is established in Kenya, when this person wants to serve Tanzanians, is being told at the custom border, this and this must be, you must submit 1, 2, 3, 4 documents before this fertilizer gets in our market. When he gets into Rwanda, it's told the same. When he gets into Uganda, told the same. Then this person will easily move to an area that has that kind of market with very little bureaucracies. And therefore, from where I sit, I feel like the region, the continent can easily grow. But the only obstacles that are standing on our ways is how we perceive nationalism and how nationalism has blocked our sights from looking at it at an economic point of view. That if we're able to address nationalism and knows I'm Tanzanian, I'm Kenyan, I'm Ugandan, that's fine. That's how the borders defined it. But we don't limit ourselves when it comes to economy, such that this investor is able to plant a farm. Then this farm supplies or serves the entire region with very little bureaucracies. Then as a region, we'll be able to move on. As a continent, we'll move on. Miriam.
Mm-hmm. And that is very true. And of course, this war, or this invasion in Ukraine has had impact, especially on 3 key sectors, that is the food, energy, and finance systems. These are the most affected. In all its dimensions, is producing alarming cascading effects to world economy already battered by COVID-19, like we have explained there earlier, and particularly dramatic impacts on developing countries. We have been the most affected. Recent projections by United Nations, UNCTAD or UNCTAD, estimate that the world economy will be a full percentage point of GDP growth lower than expected. One, due to the war, and which has severely disrupted already tight food, energy, and financial markets. Ukraine and the Russian Federation are among world's breadbasket, and this is because they provide around 30% of world's wheat and barley, 1/5 of its maize, and over half of its sunflower. And at the same time, the Russian Federation is the world's top natural gas exporter and second largest oil exporter, together neighboring Belarus, which is siding with Russia, we know that. And Russian Federation also export around 1/5 of world's fertilizer. And that's why these key sectors have been affected, the food and energy, because Ukraine and Russia are world's, considered to be world's, food bread baskets, because they provide, they supply the world with, wheat and barley. They're the top suppliers across the world. 30% of the world's wheat and barley comes from Ukraine and Russia. So you can imagine what that means. And we've seen how that has worked in affecting the food, the supply chain of this important produce. And you've reminded us what now Ethiopia is doing, and they're trying to increase the production of wheat. And I think a lot of African countries, we do have a favorable weather I believe, for growing this wheat. So maybe this is a challenge. The same way we saw COVID-19 come, and it exposed the underbelly, that is the bad condition of our health facilities, and especially in public health sector. So any good meaning government took that as a challenge, and we saw what President Uhuru Kenyatta at that time did. After the setting up of NMS, he ensured one of the top key priorities, especially around the city, was to build more health clinics and health centers, and we've seen that, and the rest of the country improving on health facilities because, it exposed badly how bad our health sectors were, COVID-19. And a few countries took that as a challenge to try to improve on that. But for the majority, I'm sure things will just stay the same until we have another crisis around the world. So this could be a challenge, and this could be an opportunity that has been presented to us. If we could just look at it from that perspective and say, how can we now fill this gap? How can we address the issue of over-reliance of wheat product from Ukraine or Russia or any other part of the world? Because if we can grow these things back home, why not? Why can't we fill in the gap and be the people who are now exporting, these products from Africa to the rest of the world? If you can look at it as a challenge and as an opportunity that has been presented for us to fill up these gaps, then, we would have turned a bad situation around to take advantage of that. Are we likely to see, certain heads think like that in this continent? Or are we just here with a big begging bowl? And we will continue like that.
I wish they were able to look at it at that angle. And I was happy with how President Uhuru Kenyatta was looking at things, especially when COVID hit the rest of the world. But he started approaching at our health sector with a serious interest that we need now to have the health sector addressed. We need to be able to invest in the production of vaccine and such kind of things. He was looking at it as someone who had learned a lesson from it. I'm trying to look at a country like Kenya. I'm trying to look at a country. So many countries in Africa, so many of them, and the way as you put it, that the climate favors us, the soil fertility favors us. But look at, let us narrow down and probably look at a country like Kenya. Elgeyo Marakwet has quite, very fertile soils. But we have allowed insecurity for so many years lead to, have the land, not put into serious production. That we have those fertile lands, we have the rains in that area, the climate is superb, but we keep fighting in that area to the extent that nobody wants to go and do farming. Nobody wants to put into proper use such lands. Look at a region like DRC Congo, different from the minerals. The land, Congo has fertile soils, fertile lands. The climate is okay. The rains are there. But people are fighting on a day-to-day basis that such land goes at a waste. Such, chance goes at a waste. Look at the Sahel region. Look at, it affects so many areas in Africa that we are able to do quite a lot. We are able to feed ourselves and even feed some other areas across the world. But we are not taking advantage of it on the grounds that we have allowed some other unnecessary conflicts remain there, which should not be there, and those that are now affecting the other side of the coin. That if today we are able to address the conflict in Elgeyo Marakwet, then put into use the fertilities and all, the soil fertility, climate, and everything that comes from that region, then I'm trying to imagine the kind of agricultural production we'll harvest from that region and the impact it will serve in food security in the country. And if all nations are able to do this in Africa, then it means food security will be sorted. Then it means chances are we'll now commercialize agriculture, not just in the continent, but probably outside the continent. But it only will work if we are able to sort some other issues, sort some messes that are affecting or are eating into what we're supposed to be capitalizing on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I was just trying to look at the latest news as far as this, as we conclude, as far as this Russia invasion into Ukraine is concerned. So there has been some weird, I don't know, it's because of the climate change. There are parts of Europe that are experiencing very high temperatures, heat waves, even in the middle of winter. So according to a certain news item here, Europe's warm winter robs Putin of Trump cards. So because of how he was especially hoping that they're almost out of winter, I think, come next month. And there was a worry with with winter and how that would have affected Europe, seeing that the supply of gas from Russia was affected, and Russia was hoping for a winter freeze to exploit Europe's reliance on its gas supplies and weaken support for Ukraine. But that long chill has yet to pass. So apparently he's not been able to, you know, that did not work out as perhaps Putin had hoped. And anyway, yeah, there has been some attacks there as well, some latest attacks there. So, all right, we want to thank you so much. Wanda Wesonga, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later here with more news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.